Alternative Reality, Volume 1, Chapter 18. A modest yet decent-looking establishment, a restaurant, called Glorious Delight, with a courtyard full of tables set out under large, pale blue umbrellas to keep away those annoying sun rays. Wouldn't want to get tan while you're out eating after all, right? It was midday, and the place was quite crowded, with most of the tables occupied by groups of chatty folk. Except one. It was a table for free, but was occupied by a single individual that stood out quite a bit. Or sat out, pardon the pun. A loner. Who else would it be, if not Luke? These days, more and more people chose to stay at home, instead of going out to socialize or just touch grass, as the young folk like to say. This especially became a tendency as more people became embroiled in alternative reality. After all, why would you go outside and smell the trees if you could do that pretty well in virtual reality? Which was why it was a pretty rare occasion to see such places packed with people. Was there some event Luke missed? He marked down a mental note to check for information about said establishments before visiting them for work. Crowded places sometimes caused complications. If the establishment complained to his company with enough witness reports, they could challenge his evaluation, which would then make his superiors dissatisfied. What a headache. Anyway, Luke arrived decked out in his usual work clothes. A long-sleeve shirt, worn blue jeans, and sneakers. Sparse dark brown hair covered his scalp, unwashed and unkempt as usual. A gruesome thing to look upon, who sat like a king, the whole table all to himself. What a prick. Yet he seemed to be completely oblivious to the raised brows or angry, self-righteous stares. Or simply pretended he was, as he stared off into the empty streets, the non-existent traffic, a cup of tea locked between his overly lean fingers, forgotten, its contents long cold. Cars were now pretty much banned in most of the city, except for those that ran on electricity. Those were, however, notoriously overpriced and quite low in demand, since the streets were refurbished to accommodate only public transport. Yup, public transport reigned supreme. Only certain roads within the city were open for cars to pass through. Trams, electric buses, trains, and various other transportation traversed the streets now. Mostly completely automatic, reducing the number of jobs for people in transportation even further. As if banning cars wasn't enough. This, naturally, raised the level of unemployment quite a bit, and subsequently created a wide range of social issues. All of which happened due to the fact that humanity inflicted too much harm on nature. Pollution was at a critical level, and the weather went completely ballistic. Before it was too late, governments all around had to take drastic measures. Cars and any form of gas or diesel-driven transportation were banned. Factories either closed down or refurbished. All over the world, governments began to take over, to force change on those that did not agree with the new policy. A number of wars broke out that almost brought the world to a nuclear apocalypse, which was eventually evaded by a hair's breadth. Pro-environment parties finally won and established their own rules, ridding the world of air pollution. Yet the problems were far from over. Unemployment and social disorder were at an all-time high everywhere. Economies were crumbling. The very foundation of humanity's world was about to be reduced to utter anarchy. Until alternative reality. That's right. Once AR and Co. came into the fold, bit by bit the world settled down. Numerous jobs appeared all around the globe, creating a demand that regenerated its crumbling economy. Social disorder slowly fizzled out. Alternative reality proved to be such an addicting and realistic experience that most of the population, even the old, spent their time there. They relived their lives differently, tried out new experiences, met new people, and did various other things that they just couldn't do in real life. Couldn't afford, didn't have the physique, or just did not have the time for. More importantly, alternative reality extended the time there by 4 times when comparing to outside the game. As in, you could spend the whole day in reality, yet enjoy 4 times as much in alternative reality itself. Getting used to the difference in time flow proved a challenge for many, of course, which created a series of problems on its own. Many cases of extreme disorientation were documented, but it never got out of hand, nor did it receive extensive media coverage. Thus, before everything could blow up, it suddenly settled down, and over the years people simply adapted. They got distracted. Now, social services maintain a huge job capacity, a means to contend with the needs of the masses, who are completely hooked to entertainment. Addicts of alternative reality. It grew its roots into life itself, forcing everything to change due to its effect on everyone, on everything. AR & Co., a company responsible for the creation of alternative reality and all related gadgets. As years went by, the company expanded, created other companies, some of which were supported by the government, all of which supplied the desperate needs of the consumers of alternative reality. It wasn't long until Special Aid detachments were created across the globe, a 24/7 working staff responsible for the well-being of the people hooked on its products. People who received the alternative reality capsule and decided to join its virtual world had to sign a certain contract. A contract that stripped them of a major part of their private lives. Basically, they had to agree to the fact that the capsule itself monitored their health and sent the data to certain databases. Databases that were observed by the special first aid stations. If the vitals of any of the observed were cause for worry, the station had the right to send their specialists to the consumer, addressing the problem as they saw fit. They even had the right to break in and forcefully disconnect the user from the virtual reality platform if the need arose. Only a minuscule part of the world that actually saw the terms of use disagreed and refused to sign. Most of whom were part of the anti-alternative reality movement. Revolutionaries, rebellious teens, and various unsettled individuals. They were the idealists that propagated real life and real experiences over what virtual reality offered. They organized, formed a large movement, but for all their shouting, they were fighting a losing battle as more and more people joined alternative reality. What didn't help was that the members of said movement often stated publicly that the whole thing was a huge conspiracy held aloft by the government. That they were the ones that funded AR & Co., all to more easily control and exploit the masses. To fight this, they recruited everyone they could to fight the man, break out of the machine, etc. Luke almost rolled his eyes. Really? All kinds of stuff went on these days. Yet all the people that were currently munching down on food in haste, just to get back to whatever they were up to, belonged to the masses, to those that succumbed to the conspiracy. Really, they were just normal people, living their everyday lives as best as they could. Luke looked back to the empty streets and couldn't hold back his cough. For all the conspiracy crap they spouted, one rarely saw their idyllic lot walking around anymore. No more angry marches with slogans held high. No more disturbing the peace of the average Joe. Like Luke. Of course, Luke could not deny that some of the conspiracy crap might hold a drop of truth. Alternative reality was too powerful of a force not to take advantage of. There was no way someone wasn't using it for their own personal gain. Profit would pop in as the most basic gain from all of this. Yet, the price for the equipment to log into the virtual reality world in addition to the monthly subscription fee just wasn't that high. Barely over €400 for the capsule, plus a 10% monthly payment. Part of which was for the possibility to keep playing, and part of it to pay the staff that monitored your vitals. Yes, you needed to actually pay people so they would infringe on your privacy. Absurd. The price was laughable though. Even including the wide variety of merchandise the company produced and distributed, the potential of the whole product was still far, far greater. Thus, one would, of course, wonder if perhaps the whole matter provided some other gain, in addition to the monetary one. Luke was just a cog though. A cog in the machine. An average guy who just didn't really care what went on around him. As long as he got what he needed. As long as his simple needs were satisfied. Food, shelter, and alternative reality. Nothing else mattered. No social connections that were important enough to maintain. No responsibilities that were in need of constant care and sacrifice of time. Heck, if Luke would disappear tomorrow, no one would really care too much. Sure, his parents might put up a show. Maybe some old acquaintances who haven't lost their lives to the newest fad yet. No one too close. To some, that might sound quite sad. An individual outside the bounds of society. A failure. A loner. Cursed to suffer the hardships of solitude. And those who've experienced it personally know that true solitude can be a nightmare by itself. Yet it wasn't so for Luke. Lonely? Sure. Being lonely was a state of mind though, something that Luke had no problems living with. On the contrary even, these circumstances made him feel quite relaxed, at ease in a sense. As if no strings of responsibility bound his movements. No one around to suffer the consequences of his heedless actions. The feeling was almost liberating. Add to it the almost bottomless well of self-pity to draw upon, and Luke could truly feel content. He had all that he wanted. There was no anxiety, no sense of haste or any stress. Luke did not feel like he had to rush, to achieve something in life before it was too late. To have a successful career, a family, kids, a fancy car, a wide range of quality social connections. None of it fit Luke's view on life. None of it fit well in his inner world. He never felt any strong feelings or attachments to anyone to begin with. No values were held in high esteem within his dark inner mind. A dark mind that kept plenty of space for a strong sense of self-loathing that ever plagued him. Or more like the loathing of all that humanity stood for, what he stood for. All that desperate search for fulfillment, mutual understanding, and never-ending inner and outside conflicts. How people were just worlds within worlds, forever cursed to be confined within themselves, their narrow cages, with just a tiny barred window through which to glimpse the ever-changing sky. Yet no more than that. You only got a glimpse and never got to touch it. Never got to leave that small room of yours. Every single human, locked within themselves, forced to view just a part of the outside world, and make up the rest through the perspective of their inner one, ever unable to escape the feeling of being the center of the universe, yet frantically avoiding the concept of egoism, self-centeredness, selfishness, desperate in their attempts to be in communion with others, to finally escape from the confines of their own self, to finally experience the outside and the cells adjacent to them, to fully understand, to comprehend. Simply put, Luke was extremely morbid, grim, and depressing. Maybe that was one of the major reasons he had no social connections. And maybe he avoided people without even realizing due to that. Maybe he knew, deep down, that no one would remain connected for long with someone like him. Maybe he considered his own thoughts fragile enough to shatter on contact with another person. A person who thought differently and spared enough time to challenge Luke's own mindset. Who knows? Only Luke. Yet, it was what it was. That was precisely why he got into alternative reality. Luke needed something to do, always. Something to occupy his time, his mind. To keep his morbid train of thought from bringing him somewhere dark. Which it was trying to do right now. Maybe customer service inspection wasn't the best choice of an employment after all? Luckily, life was having its way with Luke once again, and his stumbling thoughts were pushed aside when he became suddenly aware of quite the commotion near the restaurant's entrance. Between a waitress and a gloomy-looking customer. Not just any customer either. It was the annoying neighbor, who was, Luke quickly realized, pointing a finger at him. She was in her usual over-the-top attire, though the magnitude seemed to be toned down when comparing to the previous one. Torn dark jeans, slim fit, of course, a surprisingly white t-shirt, but unsurprisingly heavily decorated with various morbid symbols, mostly skulls and such. Long black fingerless gloves covered her arms, leaving but a fragment of naked skin between it and the short-sleeved t-shirt. Wouldn't want to offer any chinks in the armor to the sun, after all. Finally, she carried a black leather jacket, over-decorated with various straps and metal spikes. Her hair was tied up into a knot, strands of hair sticking out here and there. All of this was accompanied by a pale complexion, black eyeshadows, and dark red lipstick. It was quite unusual for people to wear all black these days, since it was the color of a certain political movement of adolescent teenagers. which usually caused trouble wherever it gathered. No surprise she encountered some trouble while trying to enter the establishment. And it seemed like Luke's presence was noticed as the two approached his table sooner than he'd wished for. Which was closer to never, really. Excuse me, sir, but this young lady stated that the two of you are... A short pause, an uncertain glance at the culprit. Acquaintanced, and that you could vouch for her. She inclined her head curtly, as if out of politeness, and stared at Luke with knowing eyes. Luke knew exactly what the waitress wanted. She didn't buy that story for a second, yet it couldn't just be brushed off on gut feeling alone. A simple no would suffice. A simple denial of any ties would end the issue there and then. Yet it seemed that Luke and the waitress weren't the only ones aware of the situation. Luke's neighbor didn't display a single drop of anger, dissatisfaction, or any threatening intent. Not a single wrinkle or a frown. Head slightly lowered, her sight turned to the side. She stood there holding herself, unsure of her own choice. Shamed even. Lips trembling ever so slightly. How torn she must have felt, placing her trust in Luke of all people. Luke didn't buy the act for a second. He could see right through her. Manipulation was the way of surviving in this cruel world, and she was born with the tools for it. Not for 1 second did Luke feel special, responsible, or chosen even. This was all a coincidence. It could have been any lone person sitting behind a table. Hell, it might have been even easier if it was somebody else instead of Luke. Which was why Luke couldn't help but feel surprised. Was she that desperate? To try and play Luke of all people? Frankly, Luke didn't like her at all. Maybe because she was simply a pretty woman. One of many that wounded his extra fragile ego with the barest of scowls. Heck, he was lucky if there was even that. More often than not, people like her would deny his very existence, his simple needs for acknowledgement, understanding, and human warmth. Luke was human, after all. Probably. Or maybe it was because she tried to play him, to manipulate, to pull him by the strings, to endanger his one and only feature that Luke himself tried so desperately to protect. The illusion of superiority. His empty pride. Yet the answer Luke gave served to mirror the contradictions within his own mind. Luke placed the teacup that was utterly forgotten for a while now. Yes, I know her and can vouch for her. A simple yet clearly visible nod. A short, yet clear answer. The deed was done now, and could no longer be undone. Dumbstruck, the waitress slowly nodded, unable to accept this outcome. Yet she still apologized and left, with her own conclusions locked away behind that professional mask. She even left a menu on the table, one that she probably had prepared in case of the unexpected. Quite the upstanding worker. Luke was forced to give this establishment quite a high mark. A pity. With a faint smile, barely kept hidden due to her presumed victory, the neighbor sat down behind the table. "Willow," she said, extending her arm in a boyish manner of greeting. Luke looked at her for a few moments. Frankly put, he did not want to get involved. though it was a little too late for that. His hesitation didn't go unnoticed either, as Willow's smile got just a little wider. Most likely she thought that Luke was being shy, with his look of a shut-in. She didn't remove her hand though, and eventually got a reaction. "Luke," he said, after reciprocating the handshake. "Tell me, do you always go out dressed like that, while searching for a place to eat?" He then asked, and leaned back, getting ready for the dreadful sport of small talk. Another pretty smile on a pretty face. Seems like she was bent on playing Little Miss Perfect today, on wearing her mask, for the rest to see and to believe. Not Luke though, not for a single second. "What can I say?" she shrugged. "I like being myself, no matter the circumstance." Willow kept on smiling with that glass smile of hers, hurting Luke's eyes. He could never cope with people in the charades they play out. Those pointless formalities, gestures of politeness and etiquette. All of it made Luke feel tired, for he had not the strength to play along. To be frank, he liked Willow better when she was a torrent of emotion, a hurricane. He saw her outfits as loud public statements, a large sign demanding attention and understanding, and hoped that at least she didn't put up that overly polite act so many people did. That she was at least honest to the bone. So many times had she proven it to Luke face to face. Yet here she was, another fake persona, pretending to be something she wasn't. Or was? Just that Luke could not or did not let himself believe it. He was quite naive and idealistic after all. So inexperienced in matters concerning the opposite sex. This time, Luke was the one to smile. And what a heart-wrenching smile it was. Even Willow seemed caught off guard a bit. "What a coincidence," he then said. "So do I." He took out some money and placed it on the table, together with a yellow card. "Be sure the waitress gets this. Oh, and you're not getting your dagger back." Luke then finished, walking away without even allowing a proper comeback. How immature. Willow seemed to be a little taken aback, her mask almost crumbling. Yet after observing Luke walk away without even turning back, she couldn't help but glance at the man with an all-knowing glimmer in the eye. One that did not promise anything good for poor little Luke.